He absentmindedly let his eyes travel from the crackle of the black and white recording, letting his mind wander to earlier days of how his parents had been. They'd been so young, their whole lives ahead of them. They'd been so happy. He took a thoughtful sip of his drink and glanced back at the screen. And that's when he saw it. He swallowed hard and choked on his drink. It had been there all along, right in front of his eyes. Hello, wonderful people. I'm Scott Leffler for Wonderbot. And here is son watches parents' wedding video, but never expected to find this. Before we begin, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more amazing videos. Joe and Beverly met while they were in high school, and they quickly became an item. Joe was besotted with Beverly, and he knew he wanted to keep her. He proposed a year later and was ecstatic when she accepted. They were only 19 years old at the time. Shortly afterward, Joe did something that would define their relationship forever, and he had no idea what ripples it would create decades later. The wedding was a gaudy and traditional affair, and the whole event was captured on video, only to be forgotten. The newlywed couple was giddy with joy and were desperate to start their lives together. They and their young love had plans to move to New York and start a family. But the monumental video only resurfaced 60 years later. Beverly and Joe were blissfully unaware of what dark situation was unfolding on the other side of the world, as well as the parts they were to play in it. They, like any young naive couple, were untouched by the woes of the world. Then reports started to trickle into the local news, and they should have been prepared for the inevitable. Joe and Beverly were trapped up in the cocoon of a new love, and then the fateful news arrived. The war in Korea had come to a head, and Joe, without any warning, was drafted for service in the U.S. military. The news had been a terrible blow to both of them, and they had to put their dreams on hold while Joe prepared to serve his country. Then they made a decision that would be cross-examined 60 years later. Joe was devastated, and he and Beverly started to sell off their possessions one by one. Amongst these was one of their most cherished items. It represented their love and the brief time they spent so happily together. They frittered the money away, foreseeing hard times ahead. Beverly would struggle in Joe's absence, and they needed a safety net until he returned. If he returned. Joe made his unwilling journey to Korea, placing an entire ocean between himself and everything he loved. He felt emotionally desolate, and his whole being became heavy with sadness. Already in his first week, his previous life seemed far away and a distant memory. As he fought for his country, fought through the tears, and fought for his life, Joe kept in touch with Beverly as best he could, writing her letters every single day. He couldn't help but wonder what would become of them and their love, and the outcome certainly looked bleak. The war continued to rage in Korea, and he felt like a man living on borrowed time. He was weary and heartsore, but the thought of his wife at home kept him going. Joel carefully contemplated the object in his parents' wedding video, replaying its smooth lines in his mind. This object had brought such pleasure and pain to Joe and Beverly. His brow furrowed in thought. Then suddenly he hardened with resolve and rose from his chair. He knew he had to take matters into his own hands. The video of Joe and Beverly's wedding had been dredged up as a delightful surprise by one of their guests. Beverly remembered how she'd felt all those years ago when she wasn't certain if her love would return from the war. Thankfully, he had, and they were celebrating their 60th anniversary. But their son, Joel, had seen the magnificent fire apple red 1948 Plymouth convertible in the battered old wedding video and had a revelation of his own. This car, Joel realized, was a symbol of his parents' love. They had to sell it when Joe was called to the army, but Joel was a man on a mission of his own. He trawled the internet relentlessly for a 1948 Plymouth convertible, and his search bore fruit when he found one. It was owned by an 80-year-old man and had a surprisingly low mileage, but there was one glaring problem. The Plymouth convertible that Joel had his heart set on was one in a handful that had been somehow unsuitable, and this one was located far away in Indiana. To make matters more difficult, the owner was distrustful of technology and was unable to send Joel pictures. But Joel, intent on buying this car for his parents, was undeterred and promptly flew a friend over to view it in person. The car was revealed to be in amazing shape, so without further ado, Joel made the purchase and got to work on minor restorations. He wanted it to be perfect when he presented it to his oblivious parents, and their reaction was worth every penny. Joel had it delivered to their door, and when they saw the gleaming new car that was the very make and model of the one they'd given up so long ago, Joe wept tears of gratitude. Joe and Beverly were completely overwhelmed by their son's insight. To them, this wasn't just a car, it encapsulated the spirit of their marriage and the love that they still felt so deeply 60 years later. The reaction to Joel's gift to his parents was, fittingly, also caught on camera. The video has since reached over 1 million views on YouTube. The Smiths intend to keep this Plymouth in the family. Joe and Beverly can often be seen in town in their new striking red convertible, and the spectacular car turns heads wherever they go. But people just see a hunk of shiny metal and gears. They're unaware of Joe and Beverly's timeless love for each other and the hardships and sacrifices they endured to become the people they are now, secure in a love that will never die.